Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, thank you for all that you're doing to reduce future wildfires from occurring, especially wildfires instigated by sparking electric lines. Colleagues, the investor-owned utilities already have special funds for addressing overhead power lines for purposes of beautification known as Rule 20A and also B and C. The goal of SB 584 is to better utilize these funds for the areas with the highest fire risk, Tier 3, to minimize the impacts of on people and property from utility-associated wildfires. SB 584 would provide for matching fund opportunities, allowing IOUs to partner with willing communities for a conversion program to underground certain electrical infrastructure. Funding would also be made available from the GGRF, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Mr. Chair, the committee has requested that I consider a number of amendments. I want to thank the committee staff for their assistance and counsel on this bill. Let me address each recommendation in the order given in the staff report. Regarding GGRF appropriations of a specific dollar amount, I accept that amendment. Tier 3, this clarification is fine. 3, reallocation protocols are also acceptable. There were additional amendments to Section 1 of Section 718, and the committee's consultant is a fierce but fair negotiator. So I will also accept those amendments to be taken up in Judiciary Committee. Mr. Chair, with a willing community, some modified provisions may have communicated the wrong concerns on what has become a life or death matter, so consequently I appreciate all the give and take that has been provided on assisting us on this bill. SB 584 provides a professional framework of cooperation between a client community and an electric utility provider. It provides access to existing tools and revenues for a win-win opportunity. We have utilities who learned hard lessons 2 decades ago. They have been hardening assets methodically over the past 20-plus years. SB 584 continues this effort with a method to expedite smart transmission of power in the safest collaborative manner. And I have 2 witnesses in support, Councilman Bob Whalen, Laguna Beach, and former Mayor Rick Mullen from Malibu. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of SB 584. I want to start out by thanking Senator Morlock and his staff for all the hard work that they've done on this bill. I was in front of this committee in 2016 with Senator Morlock on SB 1463 that was unanimously passed by the legislature and unfortunately vetoed by the governor. But Senator Morlock and I, in light of the devastation that's occurred the last 2 years statewide due to wildfires caused by utilities, we agree that new legislation is here, so I'm back before you again in support of this bill. Laguna Beach is a small community in Southern California, 23,000 residents, but we have about 6 million visitors a year. We're surrounded by 16,000 acres of open space. 85% of our community is high fire severity zone, 55% in Tier 3. We only have 3 ways in and out of town, both state highways, Pacific Coast Highway and State Route 133, better known to us as Laguna Canyon Road, which is a windy road bordered by 181 utility poles. We've experienced over 60 traffic accidents, vehicle versus pole on that road in the last 10 years, closing the road on numerous occasions. As many have done, in January I visited Paradise to see what we could learn from the disaster there that applied to our community. Paradise, like Laguna Beach, suffered from limited ingress and egress. I spoke to the CAL FIRE incident commander who was on the scene that morning, and he said that downed utility lines and poles were a huge problem on the evacuation effort. The 2018 wildfires, we know, was one of the most serious in California history. CAL FIRE has determined that at least 19 wildfires in 2017 and 18 were caused by utility lines and equipment. Camp Fire has not been finally determined, but PG&E has said it's probable that it was their equipment that caused it. The easy knock on undergrounding that you always hear from utility companies and others is that it's too expensive. This is a short-sighted analysis that focuses only on the upfront cost. When you factor in the human loss, the property damage, the health hazards and costs, the environmental damage to water resources, forests, and open space, the mountains of hazardous waste created, the greenhouse gas emitted from one major wildfire offsets a whole year of reductions, you begin to realize the true cost of utility-caused wildfires. By relocating the utility poles underground in Tier 3 zones, we're investing in smart infrastructure that looks to the future. Many Californians are absorbing the cost of utility-caused wildfires through utility rates and higher insurance rates. We need the legislature to create a program that will hold utilities accountable, expedite undergrounding projects in impacted jurisdictions, and develop a fair funding mechanism.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I just want to ask members of the public, anybody here to speak in opposition to this bill? Okay, we have one. Okay, sir, you'll continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rick Mullen. I'm a council member for the City of Malibu and a captain in the Los Angeles County Fire Department, although I'm not here speaking for the fire department. But I am here to speak in strong support of SB 584. In November 2018, the Woolsey Fire, the largest fire in LA County history, swept through and burnt nearly 100,000 acres, destroyed more than 1,600 homes, killed 3 people, and prompted evacuation of almost 300,000 people. On that day, I was the mayor of the city as well as an acting fire captain in my district, which is in the heavy brush area of Santa Monica Mountains, was particularly devastated with 60% of the homes destroyed. I started on the eastern end of my 20 square mile district, and as the 50-foot wall of flame swept through, I managed to successfully shelter in place. But as we tried to do follow the fire, which is a normal fire department tactic, we were impeded with our mobility by all the downed fire poles, 1,600 of which had to eventually be replaced. Over the past 3.5 years, equipment owned by California's 3 largest utilities ignited more than 2,000 fires across the state. Turning off power during high winds, managing vegetation, and hardening power lines are just not enough in the high-risk fires in California. And Southern California Edison has noted that these measures are only 60% as effective as putting overhead systems into the ground. For those municipalities located in Tier 3 fire threats that are extreme fire risk as designated by this CPUC's fire map, there is an immediate need to help underground electrical lines where feasible and preferred to prevent catastrophic fires from destroying lives, structures, and habitat. SB 584 will update Rule 20, the Overhead Conservation Program, which has been largely unchanged since 1967. The bill will include eligibility within Rule 20 for undergrounding for wildfire mitigation and environmental protection, specifically in local jurisdictions located in Tier 3 fire threat areas where feasible and preferred.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We're going to go now to opposition.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chairman and members, James Jack on behalf of CalTel. We do not have an opposed position on the bill, but would like to share a concern for the benefit of the committee. These poles, in addition to carrying the state's power infrastructure, also carry the state's communication infrastructure, which is critical to providing high-speed broadband, 911 access, and the like. Unfortunately, communications providers have no cost recovery mechanism as it relates to undergrounding projects. They're not eligible for Rule 20 funds and are prohibited from passing the cost of undergrounding as surcharges to their customers. And so oftentimes when Rule 20 projects are approved, communications providers, given the very high cost to underground, oftentimes have to just disconnect service to that undergrounded portion of conduit. And so we know that there are several undergrounding bills currently in the legislature, and just want to urge both the committee and the author, as we have raised at the PUC, to consider creating a cost recovery mechanism for the communications providers who share those poles. Thank you.
That's news to me. Never heard that before, but thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, we also do not have a position, but appreciate the ability to just make the comments that we appreciate the author's intent on the bill, have some concerns that we've raised on costs and feasibility, but we wanted with the author, his staff and committee to address the broad nature of the bill, but still support the of improving safety in this new normal. Thank you.
Okay, very well. We'll come to the member. Did you want to make any comments?
I don't have any comments, but I'll move the bill.
Thank you. We have a motion. And then, again, you didn't mention the amendments that you're willing to accept.
Well, I went through them.
And is that a yes?
Yeah, you twisted my arm and I accepted those amendments, Mr. Chair.
And I move the bill with the amendment.
That I twisted his arm to obtain. Okay. Closing comments, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in response maybe to some of the concerns, maybe, in this deliberation, maybe wood poles are maybe a thing of the past. Maybe we ought to look at something different, like steel or some other, hardening of these poles so they don't snap and break and cross over a road. Something to think about. Two, for some of the communication concerns, there are still light poles. And so those could still be utilized. So there's room for good debate here. But Mr. Chair, the city of Anaheim has its own public utility. And for the last 20 years, it has hardened and undergrounded in its wildfire zones. It's a long-term process. But in 20 years, they have taken care of 98% of their wildfire areas. And so we're just saying, let's utilize every tool we have to harden assets underground or whatever we can do to prevent what we've seen the last 2 years. It's critical, and we've got an opportunity to do this with with an opportunity to collaborate together. So I think this is a win-win, and request an aye vote.
Thank you, sir. Okay. We have a motion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Do pass to be amended in Natural Resources and Water, Wesso.
Aye.
Wesso, I. Morlock.
Aye.
Morlock, I. Bradford, Chang, Dodd, Hertzberg, Hill, McGuire, Rubio, Skinner.
Aye.
Skinner, I. Stern, Stone, Weiner.